Ine's sister, India Hegati, was a pioneer living in a hotel in Paris in 1931. This was 10 years after the passing of the master and 20 years after his visit to that city. There was another pioneer in Paris at that time, and I'll call her Mrs. S. One night in 1931, India had a vision of Abdul Baha. He appeared to her and told her that he wanted her to go right then to her Baha'i sister, Mrs. S. Bring her flowers and bring her money, he said. India got out of bed and immediately prepared herself to leave her hotel. As she was fixing her hair in the mirror, her face was still radiant from the vision of the master. She called down to the hotel clerk to summon a taxi for her. She gathered up all of her money. She set aside the money she needed for her personal expenses and put all the rest of her cash into a small purse. She went downstairs and asked the clerk, "Where is the nearest florist shop?" The clerk answered that there was one quite close by, but as it was just 5 o'clock in the morning, it was of course closed. India said thank you and waited for the taxi. When it arrived, she said to please take her to that florist shop. The driver said all right, but it's closed. She said, knowing that the master had a way for her to get flowers, that he should take her there anyway. They arrived and the windows were all dark. "I told you it was closed," the driver said. India said to take her to the next florist shop, and it too was closed. As they drove through the city, they came upon the farmers' market area, where all of the local growers brought in their vegetables and flowers to sell to the local stores. There was a wagon filled with flowers, and India got out of the taxi and went over to the driver. She came back with an armful of red tulips and got into the taxi. She handed the driver a slip of paper with the address of Mrs. S on it, and they drove across Paris in the early morning darkness. At this point in the story, Ines said to me, "Now imagine a conservative American woman is going across Paris at 5 in the morning to bring flowers and money to another conservative American woman." The taxi dropped India off at Mrs. S.'s front door, and she stood there with her arms full of red tulips. She knocked at the door. She heard a rustling and the door opened. Mrs. S. was standing inside wearing a heavy black coat, and it was obvious that she had been crying. Her face showed great distress. Mrs. S. looked at India and at the red tulips and cried out, "Oh Abdul Baha," and burst into tears. She sobbed and sobbed. She and India went into her home and sat down, and India tried to comfort her friend. After she was composed, Mrs. S. asked India, "Why have you come here?" India answered that the master had come to her in a vision, and that he had told her to bring flowers and money. She handed the purse to Mrs. S. Mrs. S. was astounded. When she could speak, she said, "You think I'm rich? Everyone does. And I did have money, but I ran out. And I was ashamed to tell anyone. There isn't one speck of food in this house. As you can tell, the house is cold. I cannot afford to heat it. I have been suffering, and I could no longer bear it. I decided last night to end my life. I awoke this morning and I went and put on my coat. I decided to cast myself into the Seine and drown myself. I went to the front door and was just putting my hand on the doorknob to go out when suddenly you knocked. I opened the door and you were standing there. I could not believe my eyes. 20 years ago, Abdul Baha came to my house in this city, and when I opened the door to receive him, he was standing on my front porch with an armful of red tulips, And to see you standing there with these tulips and bringing this money, I could not believe it. This true story reminds us of the following words of the Master. He will come to your aid with invisible hosts and support you with armies of inspiration from the concourse above. He will send unto you sweet perfumes from the highest paradise and waft over you the pure breathings that blow from the rose gardens of the company on high. He will breathe into your hearts the spirit of life, cause you to enter the ark of salvation, and reveal unto you his clear tokens and signs. Verily is this abounding grace. Verily is this the victory that none can deny.